I never thought I would be here, pouring my heart out to strangers online, but here I am. My name is Mike, and I want to share the story of how I discovered my wife, Sarah, was cheating on me with my cousin, Jake. It's a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, a new beginning. Sarah and I had been married for 5 years. At the start, everything was perfect. We met in college, and it felt like a fairy tale. We were young, in love, and stupidly optimistic about the future. We bought a small house in a quiet suburb of Denver, and I thought we had built a solid life together. But over the last year, things had started to change. Sarah had become distant, more argumentative over little things, and her late-night book club meetings seemed to stretch on longer than they ever used to. I dismissed it as work stress or maybe just life getting in the way, but deep down, a little voice nagged at me that something wasn't right. The first sign I noticed was her phone. It was always close by, and she was incredibly protective of it. She would get nervous if I even glanced at the screen when a notification popped up. I chalked that up to her being the private type, but it felt like a wall was slowly being built between us. Friends started to notice the change too. They would comment about how she seemed less interested in hanging out with me and more focused on her own social life. My best friend, Tom, told me to keep an eye on things, but I didn't want to believe it. After all, we were married. We loved each other, right? Then came the night that changed everything. I had a long day at work, and when I got home, Sarah's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't there. I didn't think much of it at first. She must have gone to the store or out for a walk. I started preparing dinner, and as I was chopping vegetables, I noticed something strange. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Dude, where's Sarah? I just saw her at the bar with Jake." My heart dropped. Jake was my cousin, and while we grew up together like brothers, I never thought he would cross that line. Feeling a surge of panic, I called Tom. He confirmed what I dreaded. Sarah and Jake were at the local bar, laughing, drinking, and apparently very cozy with one another. I decided to drive there, heart racing, mind swirling. The bar was buzzing with patrons, but as soon as I walked in, I spotted them in the back corner. They were practically whispering to each other, her hand resting on his arm. In that moment, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I confronted them right there, and let me tell you, the look on Sarah's face was priceless. She looked startled, and for a split second I thought she might actually be guilty. But then the denial hit. "Mike, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed, trying to play it off like I had interrupted a casual conversation. "Don't play games with me, Sarah. I saw you with my cousin. What the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice barely controlled. She started with the excuses. "It's not what it looks like. And we were just talking," which only fueled the fire of anger building inside me. Jake, on the other hand, just sat there wide-eyed. He didn't even try to defend himself. It was infuriating. As she continued to blabber, I felt the rush of emotions crash over me: betrayal, rage, sadness. How could she do this to me? I had trusted her with everything, and she was here, wrapped up in a lie with Jake. I demanded answers, and she threw a mix of excuses at me that only made me angrier. "You haven't been there for me, Mike. I felt alone," she said, tears forming in her eyes. It was almost comical how she tried to flip the situation on me. I walked away from the confrontation, my mind racing. I needed to think. I drove home in silence, the weight of the world on my shoulders. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let this happen? I felt like a fool, and that realization cut deeper than any knife ever could. As I sat in the dark, I knew that this betrayal would change everything, and I had to make a decision. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying the confrontation over and over in my head. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. I kept questioning everything. How long had this been going on? Was it just a fling, or had they developed something deeper? The trust that I had built over 5 years with Sarah felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. The next day, I decided to confront Sarah again. I called her to meet at the coffee shop down the street from our house. I needed to hear the truth, not the excuses. I felt like I was walking into a battlefield, my heart heavy with anticipation. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. Her demeanor was different, and I could see she was on edge. "Mike, I'm so glad you came. I didn't know how to reach you after last night," she said, her voice shaky. Cut the crap, Sarah. Just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on? I demanded, not wanting to mince words. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the coffee shop as if searching for an escape. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake, she stammered. Jake was just there for me when. You were. I didn't think it would go this far. I felt a wave of anger wash over me. So you just decided to sleep with my cousin because you felt alone? I spat, incredulous. You think that's an excuse? Please, Mike, I love you, she pleaded, her voice rising, clearly desperate. I messed up. I made a terrible mistake, but I want to fix this. We can work through it. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. The very person who was supposed to be my partner was now sitting across from me, asking me to trust her again after she had betrayed me so obviously. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice low and steady. You can't just throw around words like love after what you've done. It doesn't work that way. She looked defeated, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the way she had laughed with Jake, the way she had wrapped her arms around him. It drained any potential sympathy I felt right then and there. I realized that I was done listening to her excuses and her lies. I think it's best if we both take some time apart, I said finally, trying to keep my emotions in check. I need to figure out what I want because this isn't going to work anymore. Her face fell and I could see the realization hit her. You don't mean that, Mike, she said, a hint of panic in her voice. We can go to counseling. I can change. I doubt that, I replied, standing up to leave. You've already made your choice and it wasn't me. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling a mix of relief and despair. As much as it hurt, I knew I had made the right decision. I felt liberated yet simultaneously crushed. I refused to let her manipulate me any longer. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I stayed with Tom for a while, needing the support from my best friend. He was sympathetic and listened patiently as I poured out my feelings. I told him everything about the affair, the betrayal, and my decision to separate from Sarah. Dude, you deserve better than this, Tom said firmly. You're a good guy and she clearly doesn't appreciate you. I appreciated his encouragement, but the pain was still raw. I started to think about my future. Did I really want to try and rebuild with Sarah? Did I even want her back after everything? Every time I thought about it, I felt nauseated. I began to notice changes in myself too. I had always been that guy who stuck it out, who believed in fighting for love, but now I felt a sense of empowerment emerging. I was done being the victim in my own life. I started thinking about the things I wanted to do, the hobbies I'd put on hold, and the adventures I dreamed of taking. It was time to reclaim my life, but first, I had to cut ties with Sarah completely. I needed to focus on moving forward. It was a tough realization, but I knew that staying tied to her would only hold me back. I had to sever the past to embrace whatever new future lay ahead of me. With that in mind, I decided to take the plunge and start fresh. But first, I had to execute my plan to cut both Sarah and Jake out of my life for good. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it felt necessary. The days that followed were a mix of reflection and planning. I knew that I had to be decisive about severing ties with Sarah and Jake, but I also wanted to do it in a way that would leave no room for doubt. I needed to ensure that both of them understood the consequences of their actions. It felt like a heavy weight on my shoulders, but I was determined to see it through. I spent hours thinking about how I wanted to confront Jake. My emotions were still raw, and I wanted to make sure that my message was clear. It was one thing for Sarah to betray me. It was another for my own cousin to be involved in it. Jake and I had grown up together, and I had always considered him family, until now. I felt anger bubbling inside me just at the thought of him, and I didn't want to give him any excuse to downplay or dismiss what he had done. I decided to arrange a meeting with him at a local diner. I knew he frequented that place, and I felt this was the best way to catch him off guard. When I arrived, I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. The last thing I wanted was to lose control. I spotted him sitting alone in a booth, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when he saw me, and the look of surprise on his face quickly turned to discomfort. "Mike, hey, what's up?" he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Cut the small talk, Jake." "We need to talk," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I slid into the booth across from him, leaning forward slightly, my hands clasped together. Right, about what?" he asked, clearly nervous. "About what you did with Sarah," I said bluntly. "How long has this been going on?" His eyes widened as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I don't think it's what you think, man. We were just—" I interrupted him, the anger surging again. "Just what?" "Just having fun behind my back. You're my cousin, for crying out loud. I trusted you. Look, I wasn't trying to hurt you." He mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "It just happened, okay? I didn't mean for it to go that far. Not trying to hurt me, you slept with my wife. How is that not a betrayal?" I shot back, feeling my heart race. "You two have disrespected me and our family. I need you to understand that this is not just some fling. You've crossed a line." He finally looked up, shame written all over his face. "I know, man, I messed up big time, but can't we just forget this ever happened? It was a mistake, and I'll talk to Sarah. We'll make it right." "No, Jake, you don't get to just brush this off. I'm cutting you out of my life. I won't be part of a family that includes someone who betrays me like this," I said, feeling a sense of relief as I asserted my boundaries. His face fell and he started to protest, but I held up my hand to stop him. "This is not up for discussion. You have to understand that I need to protect myself. You've shown me who you really are, and I don't want any part of it." With that, I stood up to leave. I didn't care about his explanations or his attempts to apologize. I felt empowered by my decision, and it was liberating to finally take a stand for myself. I left the diner feeling lighter, knowing I had taken a necessary step toward moving on. Next, I had to deal with Sarah. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was done with her lies and manipulation. I decided to text her, arranging to meet at our house. Felt surreal to think about going back there, knowing all that had happened, but I needed closure. When I walked through the front door, the familiar smell of home hit me, but it was tainted with the memories that lingered. She was already there, pacing in the living room, her hands wringing together nervously. "Mike, I didn't think you'd actually come back," she said, her voice shaky. "I need to clear the air, Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "I want you to know that I've cut ties with Jake. I won't have him in my life anymore." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might actually feel remorse. "You didn't have to do that. I can fix this." "No, you can't," I interrupted. "This isn't just about him, it's about you too. You made a choice, and it was a choice to betray me. I can't trust you anymore." She looked hurt, and I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. "We're done, Sarah. I need to focus on myself now, and that means letting you go." "Please, Mike, I can change. I'll do anything," she begged, tears pooling in her eyes. I shook my head. "Too late for that. You've already shown me your true colors. I can't go back to a life of uncertainty and pain. I need to move on." We stood in silence for a moment, and then she whispered, "What about us? What about everything we built together? I'll always remember the good times, but they're overshadowed by the betrayal. I can't have a future built on lies," I said, feeling a sense of finality in my words. As I walked out of that house for the last time, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. I was saying goodbye to a chapter of my life that had been marred by betrayal, but I was also stepping into a new beginning. It was time to reclaim my life, and I was ready for whatever came next. It was a decision that would set me on a path to healing and discovery, and I was determined to embrace it fully. The following weeks felt like a whirlwind. I was adjusting to this new reality of being single again, and while it was tough at times, I also felt a sense of liberation. I had finally cut ties with Sarah and Jake, and it felt like I was shedding a heavy weight off my shoulders. It was strange being alone after so many years of partnership, but I was determined to make the most of this fresh start. With the emotional turmoil of the past behind me, I decided to focus on myself and reconnect with the things that brought me joy before Sarah had entered the picture. I picked up old hobbies that had been neglected, like playing guitar and hiking on weekends. I found solace in nature, venturing out on trails that I had always intended to explore but had postponed. It was refreshing to feel the wind on my face and the sun on my skin as I cleared my mind during long walks. My friends rallied around me, offering support and companionship. Tom was my rock during this time, always encouraging me to get out and live life. We started going to trivia nights at local bars, catching up with friends and meeting new people. It felt good to laugh again, to be around people who cared about me and wanted to help me heal. One evening, as we were finishing up a particularly competitive trivia night, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Jenna. She was funny, smart, and had a great energy that was hard to ignore. We chatted easily, and for the first time in a long while I felt a spark of attraction. There was something refreshing about her, a lightness that reminded me that life could be fun again. Over the next few weeks, Jenna and I spent more time together, going out for coffee and exploring Denver. We bonded over our love for music and the outdoors, and I found myself laughing more than I had. In months, it was a beautiful distraction from the pain I had gone through, and I couldn't help but feel grateful for this new connection. But even as I enjoyed this new budding relationship, doubts crept in. I found myself questioning whether I was ready to open my heart again after everything with Sarah. Was I rushing into something new too soon? I had spent so much time processing my emotions and healing, but the fear of getting hurt again loomed over me. One night as Jenna and I were having dinner, I decided to be honest with her. "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm coming out of a difficult situation. I was recently divorced and it's all still pretty fresh for me," I confessed, watching her reaction closely. She looked thoughtful, her eyes steady. "I appreciate you telling me that, Mike. I'm excited about getting to know you, but I also understand if you need time. It's important to feel ready." Her understanding made me feel more at ease. We talked more about my past, about relationships, and what we were looking for moving forward. It felt good to share my story and not worry about judgment. Jenna encouraged me to take my time, and I realized that I could enjoy her company without the pressure of rushing into something serious. As the weeks rolled by, I found myself growing more comfortable with Jenna. We continued to explore the city, attending concerts and visiting art exhibitions. She had a way of bringing out a side of me that I thought had been lost forever, one that was fun, adventurous, and unguarded. However, I still had lingering feelings about my past, especially when I would see Sarah or hear about her from mutual friends. It felt like a wound that was still healing, and I needed to confront it head-on. One afternoon, I decided to send Sarah a message to clear the air once and for all. "Sarah, I think we need to talk, not about us but about what happened. I don't want any bad blood between us." I typed, hitting send before I could second-guess myself. I wasn't sure what I expected from this conversation. Maybe I hoped to find closure or allow myself to forgive her. A few hours later, she replied, and I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. "Okay. Mike, I'd like that. Can we meet at the park tomorrow?" she suggested. I agreed, and as I prepared for our meeting, I felt a strange sense of anticipation. I had moved on with my life, but a part of me was still curious about how she felt about everything. When I arrived at the park the next day, I found Sarah sitting on a bench, looking smaller than I remembered. She wore a somber expression, almost as if she were carrying the weight of her decisions. "Hi, Mike," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," I replied, taking a seat beside her. "Thanks for meeting me." "I know this must be hard for you," she started, her eyes cast down. "I can't express how sorry I am about everything that happened. I hurt you, and I know I can't take that back." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I appreciate you saying that, but it's important to me that you understand how deeply you affected my life. I invested so much in our relationship, and it's hard to erase those memories. I've been in therapy since we separated," she confessed, looking at me earnestly. "I've been working on myself, and I realize now how my actions hurt you and how selfish I was. I never meant to betray you." Hearing her voice, the pain of her actions was a strange relief. I didn't feel the need to defend myself. I simply wanted her to understand the impact of her choices. "I genuinely hope you find happiness and healing, Sarah, but it's clear to me now that I needed to move on. I can't go back to what we had." She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I understand, and I don't want to hold you back. You deserve to be happy." After a long pause, I said, "I do hope you find what you're looking for. I'm moving forward in my life, and I think it's best if we don't stay in touch. I need to focus on the future where I can thrive and be happy." Sarah wiped her eyes and nodded, understanding the finality of my words. "Thank you for giving me this chance to talk. I hope you find someone who truly deserves your love." As We parted ways. I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I had confronted my past, and I felt a renewed sense of freedom. I was finally ready to embrace my future fully and completely, and as I walked away from the park, I couldn't help but look forward to what lay ahead. My connection with Jenna blossomed, and I felt optimistic that I was on the right path. I had survived the storm, and now it was time to enjoy the sunshine. As the weeks passed, my relationship with Jenna blossomed into something beautiful. We were taking things slow, and I appreciated that. She was understanding and patient, never pushing me to rush into anything serious. I found myself looking forward to our time together, whether we were exploring new restaurants or simply enjoying quiet evenings at home watching movies. It felt refreshing to have someone in my life who was genuinely supportive and made me laugh. However, there were moments when I couldn't shake off the shadows of my past. Sometimes, late at night, when I was lying in bed with thoughts racing through my mind, memories of Sarah would creep back in. I could still hear her laughter, feel the warmth of her presence, and it would hit me like a wave. I realized that while I had made great strides in moving on, I still had to confront those lingering feelings head on. One night, as Jenna and I shared a bottle of wine at her apartment, I decided to be open with her about my struggles. You know, I really like where we're headed, but I still have some emotional baggage from my past relationship. I confessed, looking into her eyes. Jenna took a sip of her wine, nodding thoughtfully. That's totally understandable, Mike. You went through something really tough. Just know that I'm here for you no matter what. Her words meant a lot to me. I felt safe expressing my vulnerabilities with her. I just don't want you to think that I'm comparing you to Sarah or holding back because of what happened. You deserve my full attention and affection, I explained. I get it. It's normal to have those thoughts. Just focus on what we have now. We're building something new together, she said with a reassuring smile. That conversation helped me realize just how important transparency was in our relationship. I didn't want to carry any unspoken fears or insecurities into this new chapter of my life. With Jenna's support, I felt like I could finally breathe again. As summer approached, Jenna suggested we take a weekend trip to a nearby cabin in the mountains. I was hesitant at first. I worried that getting away might be too much too soon, but she assured me it would be a great opportunity for us to relax and enjoy nature together. After some contemplation, I agreed, excited at the thought of a peaceful getaway. The cabin was cozy, nestled in the woods, surrounded by towering evergreens and the soothing sounds of nature. From the moment we arrived, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We spent our days hiking, exploring nearby trails and enjoying quiet evenings by the fireplace. It felt like a world away from the chaos of my past. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Jenna turned to me with a serious expression. Mike, I know we've only been together a short time, but I want you to know that I really care about you. I can see a future for us, she said, her voice steady. Her words struck a chord in me. I care about you too, Jenna. You've been incredible and I appreciate everything about you, I replied, my heart racing. But then the familiar fear crept in. Just know that I'm still working through some things. I want to be honest about where I'm at emotionally. I understand, she said, taking my hand in hers. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just want you to know that I'm here for the long haul if you want me. That night, I lay awake in bed, thinking about what Jenna had said. I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Could I truly open my heart again? Did I have enough space within me to embrace a new love after the betrayal I had faced? The next morning, I woke up determined to confront these questions head on. As Jenna brewed coffee in the kitchen, I decided to join her. Can we talk? I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. Of course, she replied, pouring two steaming mugs and handing one to me. I want talk about us and where we're heading. I realize I've been holding back because of my past, but you deserve to know how I really feel, I said, taking a deep breath. I'm all ears, she said, looking at me expectantly. I've enjoyed every moment with you. You've shown me kindness and understanding that I didn't think I'd find again. But I also want to be honest. I'm not entirely ready to jump into a serious relationship, and I need you to know that. I confessed, feeling a weight lift as I spoke. Jenna smiled gently, her eyes warm. Mike, I appreciate your honesty. I'm not in a rush either. I want us to build something meaningful, but I also want us to take our time. There's no pressure. Her response filled me with relief. I had been so afraid of losing her that I had almost sabotaged our connection with my own fears. In that moment, I realized that I didn't have to choose between being cautious and allowing myself to feel again. I could embrace this new relationship without the weight of my past suffocating me. As the days turned into weeks, I began to feel more at ease with Jenna. We continued to explore our relationship, taking it one step at a time. I started to believe that it was possible to love again, to trust again, and to find happiness after heartbreak. However, I still needed to confront my past fully. I made a decision to reach out to Sarah one last time. I wanted to ensure that I had fully closed that chapter in my life, and I needed to do it for myself. I sent her a text, asking if she wanted to grab coffee and talk once more. It was time to put the final pieces in place before I could fully embrace my future with Jenna. When I sent that text to Sarah, I felt a mixture of apprehension and determination. It was time to confront my past head-on one last time so I could fully embrace my future without any lingering doubts or unresolved feelings. I needed closure, both for myself and for the relationship I was building with Jenna. When we agreed to meet for coffee, I chose a small cafe that was somewhat neutral ground. It wasn't our usual spot, and I felt it would be a place where I could keep my emotions in check. As I walked into the cafe, I felt a strange sense of nostalgia. The memories of us laughing and sharing intimate moments flooded back, but I quickly pushed them aside. I was here to close the door, not reopen it. Sarah was already sitting at a table when I arrived. She looked different, a bit more vulnerable than I remembered. There was a softness in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a while. I approached the table, my heart racing but my resolve firm. "Hey, Mike," she greeted, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Hi, Sarah," I replied, taking a seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me." "I really appreciate it," she said, fiddling with her coffee cup. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. I've been going to therapy and I know I messed up." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I wanted to give you a chance to share whatever you feel you need to say, but I also want to be clear about my perspective." She nodded, her expression serious. "I know I hurt you deeply and I can't express how sorry I am. I didn't understand what I had until I lost it. I've been doing a lot of reflecting and I've realized how selfish I was." As she spoke, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. She was acknowledging the pain she had caused, and for the first time I felt like she was genuinely remorseful. "I appreciate your honesty, but the reality is that what you did was irreversible. I can't go back to how things were and I've had to learn to let go," I said firmly. "I understand that," she replied, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to say that I hope you find happiness, Mike. You deserve it, I see that now." I took a deep breath, letting her words settle. "Thank you. I've been on a journey to find my own happiness again after everything, and I think I'm finally getting there. I want you to know that I've started to move on and I'm seeing someone new," I said, trying to gauge her reaction. Her expression softened and I could see a hint of regret in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "That's great. I'm glad you're finding your way. You deserve someone who truly values you." The conversation flowed more easily as we talked about our lives since the split. I shared some of the things I had been doing, getting back into music, exploring new hobbies, and spending time with friends. Watching her listen intently, I realized that while we had shared a significant part of our lives, it was time for us to part ways for good. We were both on different paths now, and that was okay. As our coffee cups emptied, I felt a sense of closure begin to wash over me. I had faced my past and acknowledged the hurt, but I was also ready to let go of the anger and resentment I had held onto for so long. I no longer needed those emotions to define my future. Before we parted ways, I looked at Sarah and said, "I wish you well, Sarah. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for in life. I'm moving forward and I hope you can too." "Thank you, Mike. I really hope the best." "For you too," she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We stood up and hugged briefly, a gesture that felt both final and freeing. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a lightness in my step. I had faced my past and emerged stronger. I was ready to embrace the future, free from the baggage that had weighed me down for too long. When I returned home, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I had taken the final step to close one chapter of my life while opening another. My relationship with Jenna flourished after that coffee meeting. I felt like I could finally be fully present with her, free from the ghosts of my marriage with Sarah. As summer turned into fall, Jenna and I continued to grow closer. We traveled together, shared our dreams, and created new memories that felt authentic and joyful. I realized that this time around, I was not only ready for love, but I was also ready for a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and real connection. Through the pain of betrayal, I had learned valuable lessons about relationships, trust, and the importance of self-worth. I understood that sometimes moving on means letting go of the past, but it also means having the courage to embrace new beginnings. As I looked forward to the future, I felt optimistic. Life is a journey, and while the road may be winding and unpredictable, I was ready to face whatever came my way. I had learned to love again, and this time I wouldn't take it for granted. My heart was open, and I was ready for whatever adventures awaited me.